From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring.
So your lip service is great, but your public service ain't.
I remember one of them distinctly lunging at me time and time again, trying to grab my gun. And I heard people in the crowd yelling, "Get his gun, kill him with his own gun."
That grace is not being extended to a system that is designed to produce this outcome every single time.
What happened in the White House over the last several weeks is an abomination. The ways in which Black staff, Black appointed officials in the Biden administration had to go to bat for Marilyn Mosby versus the white staff in the administration.
I would say you are being used and bought cheap.
We're all bought for cheap. There were people calling Bill Clinton the first Black president because his motherfucker was playing a saxophone.
When I went to a certain well-known, rapper, one of the OGs.
Name names.
I won't.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome. From every mountainside, let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let us pray for our 47th president. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that you gave our 45th and now our 47th president a millimeter miracle. We pray that you use our president, that we will live in a nation where we will not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. Or from the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring.
Okay, well, welcome home, everybody. That was a mess, but this is episode 63 of Native Land Pod, where we give you our breakdown on all things politics and culture. And I'm very, very fortunate to be here with you today with my co-host, Tiffany Cross and Angela Rod. Ladies, how are you?
Great.
I'm just letting freedom ring out here in these plagiarist streets.
Yeah, hello. Right. They letting snow fall down here in Florida, so anything is possible. Anything.
Everything clearly goes in this day and age.
I'm telling you, I'm reminded this morning when I woke up and saw this white in the yard in the streets of my grandmother saying, "We living in our last days."
And evil days.
I just want to tell the audience what they just heard, because not everybody watched the inauguration, but obviously Martin Luther King Day has passed. Yeah. And so we started the show with the authentic words of Dr. Martin Luther King. But what you heard immediately following that was a plagiarizer, essentially. This preacher that Donald Trump invited to Inauguration this past weekend, which I know a lot of you did not watch, but for the few of you who did, who was cosplaying Dr. King in the most disrespectful way. So I don't know, Angela, if the King family can sue, but it certainly seems like he did not give credit to the originator of those beautiful words.
And the fact that he laid it into the middle of a, quote, prayer, right? Supposedly praying.
Yeah, I think that he was praying. He was also performing. He did a little praise dance. He was the mighty mountains, whatever. Anyway, point is, I don't know who goes to this man congregation, but please call him for an altar call. What are we talking about this week, friends?
Yeah, what are we talking about?
What do y'all have? Tell me.
Well, I want to get into briefly, if there's time, because we got a lot to get to in the show. So if there's time, I want to talk about the federal government ending the work from home policy as soon as Donald Trump took office. I'm curious what you guys think about work from home policies, because this is something that people are split on. But I really want to dive deeper into that and explain to the audience what this could mean for our politics, but more importantly, what it could mean for DEI initiatives.
Nice. Angela.
I want to talk about pardons. We know that the president, no matter who it is, has the full pardon power constitutionally. And I want to talk about how Joe Biden chose to use his pardon power in his final days, even his final hours, versus how Donald Trump chose to use his pardon power, even both of them on January 6th related issues in his first few hours as president.
Yeah. Well, rounding, I guess, the conversation, I'd love for us to engage on this topic of how Black folks are supposed to interact with this new administration. working together, we not? Are there common causes? Are there not? Are there minstrels and useful tools in the middle of this? And could progress in some way be gained without losing our self-respect, our dignity, and obviously our commitment to our democracy and to our people? So I want to get into that with y'all too. So let's get it started.
So you guys, I have been really kind of feeling the conundrum of sadness. You guys know I've been trying to be on my workout kick, but I've been so frustrated over the last couple of days. I don't think I can remember a more miserable MLK Day. And I think as much as I hoped that we would go out on a high note, I felt like the Biden administration ended with such a low cloud hovering over it, and then we welcomed in Armageddon. So I feel really frustrated about what happened with the pardons. I want to go to like the lower level frustration and then the high level of what was to come, just in terms of chronology. But I just want to acknowledge first something positive. Y'all know I like to start with the good. The thing that I believe the Biden administration got right about the pardon power was pardoning a preemptive pardon, which is unprecedented for the January 6th committee witnesses,
Staff.
and the staff and the members. And I think that was necessary. You guys know my bias is Congressman Thompson is family to me. He was a remarkable chair of that special committee. And I was terrified of what would happen to him in particular in the Trump administration. So Joe Biden was pressured to protect them. And it took a lot of pressure, to be clear. It wasn't an easy lift. But it didn't take as much pressure for him to pardon his siblings, which I've never heard anyone mention were in harm's way. But he pardoned all of his siblings, not himself, not his wife, not his daughter, but all of his siblings, many of whom I've never heard of as well that day. What he did not do was pardon our good sister, our friend Marilyn Mosby. 97,000+ people in this country signed on to a Color of Change petition supporting a pardon for Marilyn Mosby for withdrawing her own money out of her own retirement account after being in the crosshairs of the Trump administration for many years. And despite Marilyn Mosby having the same prosecutor on her case, Leo Wise, as Hunter Biden did in his case, they could not see a connection. I'm going to go into the details of that in just a moment, but I will say I will draw a contrast with that into what Donald Trump's administration does for the people who ride with him, for the people who rode with him up to January 6th to stop the steal, to steal things off of Nancy Pelosi's desk, to wreak havoc to the point where Lisa Blunt Rochester, who is now a black senator in the first from Delaware, to be driven to her hands and knees to pray for their safety against violence of a mob of terrorists, of insurrectionists on January 6th, 2021. He said, I got you. You had my back. I'm going to pardon all of you and commute the sentences of 30+ people for the actions they took on January 6, 2021. Meanwhile, the Biden administration's bar and standard for what it requires for a black person in this country to have gotten a pardon is impossible. It is impossible. What happened in the White House over the last several weeks is an abomination. And I'm talking about the ways in which black staff, black appointed officials in the Biden administration had to go to bat for Marilyn Mosby versus the white staff in the administration. Y'all should be ashamed of your goddamn selves. Like, truly, there's no reason that you can tell me that an individual who was selling kids virtually to a for-profit entity should have gotten a sentencing commutation, but you can't see the fact that all of the legacy of this administration in justice reform was built on the backs of prosecutors like Marilyn Mosby and Kim Gardner and Kim Foxx and Aramis Ayala and, yes, Kamala Harris. And when in 2020 Kamala Harris was running Marilyn Mosby had her back to ensure that the general public knew that she was not a top cop, that she was a progressive prosecutor. So to watch Marilyn left to be hung out to dry for this because the people who continued the case were Biden administration appointees, and they didn't want to leave the judge with egg on her face, and they didn't want to leave Eric Barron with egg on his face. So now the person who actually had our backs is left hanging out to dry. I got major beef with it. I really, really do. And I think it is massively unfortunate and so negligent and reckless
for
said Black folks.
Who is, can you just tell us, you said somebody was selling kids to for-profit. That person got a pardon. Who is that? You said Eric Barron. Sorry. I just want, just for me and the other listeners who don't know what you're referencing, can you tell us who that is?
There is a Cash for Kids scandal that existed in Pennsylvania. If somebody has a moment, particularly on our production team, to look up the name of the judge, it is a very well-known case in the Pennsylvania area. The judge was not pardoned. I don't believe I used those words. If I did, I apologize.
I know who you're talking about. Yes. The judge who was taking pay, right? They were paying. He was. Yes. I know who you're talking about. Okay. I had something completely different in mind.
Yes. Cash for Kids. So
just,
yeah.
Google Cash for Kids, listeners.
Yeah, it's a well-known scandal in the Pennsylvania area. I did not. If I said that he was pardoned, I apologize. I thought I said that his sentence was commuted.
You probably did. I may have misunderstood.
Okay, I'm trying to pause because they said they were mad they couldn't hear us last week, so I make sure I don't cut y'all off. So I want to make sure your thoughts are complete. I'm done with my rant. I'm just gonna repeat myself because I'm pissed.
Well, I just and really quickly, can you say, because you said Eric Barron and not everybody knows who that is. He is the person who replaced her in Baltimore?
No, he's not. So okay. Eric, So the U.S. attorney who was appointed after Robert Hur, who was the special prosecutor on the Joe Biden classified documents case, who said he was too old to withstand trial, and Steve Shinning were the bosses of Leo Wise under the Trump administration in the district attorney's office in Maryland. When Joe Biden came in, he appointed a new U.S. attorney by the name of Eric Barron. He is a former state legislator in Maryland. He is someone who Maryland worked hand in hand with. Eric did not drop those charges. I suspect it is because there was going to be a revolt by all the white boys in that office who were under the Trump administration and stayed just like Leo did under Eric. He demoted Leo, but they raised hell in that office and said if he removed Leo from that case, they were all going to leave. And so I believe that Eric kept the case going because of that. Eric and the judge both worked for Joe Biden in the Senate. She worked on the ethics committee. Eric worked on the judiciary committee, or worked with Joe Biden. During the Barack Obama transition, Eric went to the transition team and worked to help get Lydia Grigsby her first judicial appointment, which was in the bankruptcy court space. She has no criminal court experience whatsoever, no criminal law experience. That is the judge. Those are two Biden appointees who I suspect, this is not what was reported to me, but I suspect that was the reason, an additional reason beyond this public corruption bucket that they forced her into, that they didn't want to pardon Marilyn.
Well, I know that's a lot of weaving, but I think it's important so people know how this works, that everybody had a role to play and to pay attention to who these judges are that are being nominated and who the U.S. attorney and state's attorney, these are elected positions. So that's what that matters. I just want to remind our audience about J6, because you brought that up. And Donald Trump, as you all know at this point, this week pardoned every single person who was involved in January 6th. He said he wasn't going to pardon people who were violent, and that's not true. And I want to remind you, Pam Bondi, who was his nominee for Attorney General, faced a confirmation hearing last week, and she was asked about pardoning January 6th people, particularly those who were violent against law enforcement. I want you to take a listen to her answer.
I just want to flag for you, he did not pardon every single person. He also commuted some of the sentences. I think it's 14 people. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Good point. But either way, they are free at this point. So
cutting off house arrest bracelets. Yeah.
Exactly. So take a listen to what Trump's nominee for Attorney General has to say when she's asked about people who are violent with law enforcement.
Let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
So she condemns any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country. I want you all to take a listen to this harrowing testimony from Officer Michael Fanone. You've seen him a lot for the past 5 years now. Listen to what he experienced on that fateful day on January 6, 2021.
I was struck with a taser device at the base of my skull numerous times, and they continued to do so until I yelled out that I have kids. I remember one of them distinctly lunging at me time and time again, trying to grab my gun. And I heard people in the crowd yelling, "Get his gun," kill him with his own gun.
So you hear the hypocrisy here. And I have to tell you, Angela, being part of the 92% and the things that Black women do for this country and the little reward, the little thanks that we get. And I don't even want to make this a party thing. I mean, to me, it's just from the country because Marilyn is a mother of 2. This should be something that everybody cares about. This isn't a Republican can go through this. A white woman can go through this. Yes. But somehow when it's a Black woman, it is this shoulder shrug, move on, we don't care. And I take your point about White House staff, whatever you're willing to share about that. But I think that's so disappointing because it speaks to what happened on the campaign. Like we have to fight within the fight to advocate for ourselves. And the finding out part is going to suck for all of us, especially those of us who didn't down. And to know that there are so many people within the administration who did is disappointing. And before you all start with the comments on y'all Democratic shields and you didn't know and blah, 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 ain't nobody here a spokesperson for the party. We are all here advocating for the health and benefit of Black people. And though Marilyn's case is something that Angela worked really hard on to bring to the light, I do want to acknowledge that there are still over 100,000 Black men and women who have had their liberty taken away, who are living in unconscionable circumstances in these prisons. From finding roaches in your food, to not having access to health care, to women miscarrying in prison, to violence from corrections officers, violence from fellow prisoners. Our criminal justice system is god-awful, and it's only going to get worse under this administration.
I'll just say, one, Angela, I hear your passion and obviously your outrage, and all of it is merited. And I want to thank you just, again, out loud and in public for everything that you did to shine a light on this case. And for me, while I love Marilyn Mosby, to the hills and back, she is representative of a public official mustering up, summoning the courage necessary to take on institutional racism in the system. And when she announced prosecution of those law enforcement officers, it was a shot over the bow, their direction, that anywhere they exist in this country, that they will be held accountable if they run afoul of the law, even if you have a badge. And to me, that's the underlining through line that runs through. We can hear all the stories that are out there, but I think the through line that runs against why she could not be pardoned is because we've got these Democrats, Republicans, and everything on the other side and in between who will never, ever, ever truly commit to holding law enforcement accountable to the same rules and standards as we, as everyday regular people, are held in America. They drew a line when they went after Marilyn in the state of Maryland in her own seat, and they were not going to make it possible for an example to be set that a woman who went after law enforcement, who prosecuted them for bad and illegal behavior, would be able to come out on the other side and say victory was had. They were never going to make that possible. And it's unfortunate, but more importantly, I think it will send a chilling signal to anyone else who wants to be the next Marilyn to not even try it.
That's right.
It's not political for me. For me, the political part is over. He won. And, growing up, I was taught to respect the office. So, Nelly's here.
And you did get a little backlash, but you were like, whatever, I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do. This is, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you were really cool about it. You handled it well. You came forward and you talked about it. A lot of people wouldn't do that. Why did you come forward and talk about it?
Well, because I think it's important that, we show some people have their own opinions about things, and sometimes things can get a little bit hazy and in a way that everybody feels the same way about everything, and that's just not it. I think certain people have an outlook, and I've always believed that you got to walk through the fire sometimes to get results, and regardless of what you feel about it, we as a people, and I mean, my heritage as far as being African American, we've always had to work with people that we may not have always agreed with to get things done, and I think that struggle continues. But at the end of the day, if the men and women of this country can put their life on the line for a president that they may not have voted for, I can definitely perform.
Y'all, so that was artist Nelly giving response in an interview. He did a couple of those following his performance during the inaugural activities for Donald Trump. A lot has been said about him and Snoop and others who have participated, who showed up, who in some cases said kind things about Donald Trump. Angela, I know you had a clip of Snoop that you wanted to throw into. Can we toss to that real quick?
Remember when we were kids? I don't know where you from. It's probably different. When we were kids, no white kids wanted to be black. None of them. Now, braids, tattoos,
They even
slang.
call each other the N-word.
Hello.
Yeah.
So what do you think that's doing to their people up top? It's
Yeah,
a
I feel you.
brainwash. You get what I'm saying? So we got to restore order. Because in a minute, they going to be politicians. And if they acting like niggas, then they going to be looking out for niggas.
I understand.
So we need to fuck this shit back up so that way they can get back in their mind that they against us. When it's too late now because you have so many interracial relationships and people who have became family members. My grandson is white.
Yeah, I'm interracial. I'm black and white.
No, my grandson is white, so I have no racism in me. I love white people, but I don't like Donald Trump.
So that was Donald Trump. I'm sorry,
That
that
was
was
not Donald
Snoop making some comments about Donald Trump. And
That was from
Go ahead.
that was not recent. I just was saying that's not a recent. That's the same interview where he said, if people are pushing back on me for not liking Donald Trump, your listeners are racist, that kind of thing. So those clips have been overplayed. I think that it is important in this discussion to be able to hold space for nuance. I'm gonna say some stuff that I don't agree with because I'm conflicted, and I'm definitely gonna say some stuff that y'all don't agree with.
yeah, no, that's real. Well, let me just example because Ilhan Omar tweeted
Yes.
out, Congresswoman Omar tweeted out about all the outrage that was being projected at entertainers who were at the inauguration appearing in either in support or certainly in contract labor to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And she said, we're making all this noise about the artists, but what about the elected members of Congress, elected officials who went out and told America to be worried about this fascist who made the choice to be in attendance at the inauguration. So y'all, I know y'all saw the heat coming down. I know you probably had your own observations of what happened if you individually watched. I'm curious to know, one, what do you think about the clips that you heard? Nelly's obviously is in direct response to this moment. Snoop's is he actually has not, so far as I could tell, made a public comment about his participation in the inauguration. So we pull from previous comments, but how are you feeling about it? What did you think? I will just first posit that I was probably most demoralized, not by any of those comments necessarily, but by the pastor who we played at the beginning. My spirit was totally shook because I saw an arresting of the spirit and the moral of Dr. King being leveraged toward the most antithetical figure today in American politics to what King's vision was. And that felt like a low moment. I'm curious to know if there was one like that for y'all or how y'all responded to this one.
I'll stay on topic for this one with these clips we just heard from Nelly and Snoop Dogg. And I think the most disheartening thing for me about hearing that is the ignorance that is on display from both of them. I don't think performing for Donald Trump at inauguration is analogous to the people who serve in armed services by any means. I'm so disappointed to hear how Snoop Dogg describes his childhood. That may have been his experience, but certainly white kids wanted to be black when we were younger. In the 80s, they were into rap music, break dancing. They were wearing black hairstyle. There's never been a time.
Probably goes back further than that, right?
Right. Like literally since we've come here, all the swagger and everything we bring, all the culture we bring to this country has always been widely celebrated by people, not just across the country, but across the globe. And I wish he had that level of pride and level of information and knowledge, and was intellectually curious about it, which he painfully isn't. I did note that Nelly made his rounds. He didn't sit across from anybody black. I would have loved for Nelly to sit across from Joy Reid on MSNBC and have a conversation with her. Like, sitting across from a black woman is going to be a drastic, we're not going to go for the bullshit. So everything you said, you have to now stand on business and defend it. So it's just disappointing, to be honest with you. You know, we talked, and even with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, it's no disrespect to her, but I think it's quite the assumption that black folks do not hold that outrage for those elected officials, for those folks in business. I wonder what black people she's referencing, what black people she's talking to. On this very show, we have had all the smoke for people who show up. We have on the comments, people have smoke for people who show up. People we talk to in our group chat have felt a way about not only the elected officials who are engaging this administration as though it's normal, but also for entertainers. I don't really expect a lot from entertainers, but I do expect some level of acknowledgement of all the policies that will directly harm these people. Can I just say this about Snoop really quickly? He disappointed me during the LA mayor's race. He supported Rick Caruso, who was running against then Congresswoman Karen Bass, for the mayor of LA. Rick Caruso is a billionaire developer. He's known for, he built the Grove for our West Coast friends. He's was a candidate, but also a former Republican who switched parties not before he ran. He was the former president of the LA Board of Police Commissioners. He was a cop lover who promised to massively fund the LAPD. Now, we all remember Snoop's music and things that he said. He had a lot of fear-mongering over this dubious crime wave that was happening in LA. And when it came down to what he actually did for community, it was, billionaire stuff, tax-deductible contributions to protect him. And I remember Snoop, I can't remember the interview, so forgive me if this is not accurate, but there was something that Snoop asked him for that he did. Something for his football team or a field. And I remember hearing this like, my G, they bought you cheap. If that's all it took for you to endorse this man because you picked up the phone and asked him for something and he called you back, they bought you cheap. And I think when we organize, particularly as black women and black men, all the black men who are, right beside us in this fight, when we organize, we do so with the greater community in mind. So I don't know. I don't like it. I want these rappers to just, if you don't know, shutting up is free. 50 Cent, Kodak Black, Nelly, Lil Wayne, Sexy Red, I think she later changed, The Baby, and Snoop. This is just a handful of people who I have zero interest in. I would defy them to have some sort of intellectual conversation with anybody, but they're out there talking politics and being uplifted like mascots for white folks. And I find it gross.
I first wanted to just acknowledge that Ilhan's statement was not directed at black people. She was saying people generally in her tweet. I think
Forgive
that
me, Congresswoman.
She's not gonna mind. She's not gonna mind. I think that it's important that we consider that there are multiple people on every side of this that haven't had the same smoke. So we say for all of the parties involved. I will say also this idea of buying you cheap is a bipartisan problem, right? Some of what I think I'm really wrestling right now is we have for a long time, Tiff, you reference it all the time too in conversations that you've had with LB, our friend Latasha Brown, who runs and is a co-founder of Black Voters Matter. that we are often voting as a part of a harm reduction strategy. But what happens when the harm is not really reduced? What happens when the hemorrhage turns into a slow bleed, but you're bleeding no less? We're all bought for cheap. There were people calling Bill Clinton the first black president because this motherfucker was playing a saxophone. So how cheap is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't even buy nothing. Like, he just, he down for us. Why? Look at the welfare laws. Look at the crime bills, right? Like, let's be kind of for real about that. So I think what I'm really wrestling with here is when you have people in elected office or who are running for office who are paying attention to your needs on a micro level, I'm not talking about a macro level, and you finally get the attention that you know that you deserve on a micro level, and you prioritize your politics based on that micro level interest. I am frustrated about it, but I get it. And I can use as an example, I'm so glad we talked about the pardon power first, because I can use an example, my rhetoric right now about the Biden administration based on the fact that they did not pardon Marilyn Mosby and what that means to me figuratively, despite having done the right thing for Marcus Garvey, who I would argue, I understand that's what his family wanted, but I would argue Marcus Garvey would be way more for the liberation of black people who are still alive than clearing his record, because he's a hero to us no matter what, Black History Month or not. Whether it's that or it's the fact that there are people, the CBC members, who begged the Biden administration for executive order after executive order, or it's Arian Simone, who is fighting with every penny she had to protect the Fearless Fund, trying to fund us and couldn't get an executive action out of the administration for that. So your lip service is great, but your public service ain't. And then the people who don't do either, I don't know that it's not that much worse. And so when we talk about Snoop, and this is my personal bias, my blind spot, my point of hypocrisy, I love Snoop personally. I am frustrated by the decision he made to perform at an unofficial event during the inauguration, which is the crypto ball. The man who ran that ball is a former executive from PayPal. I don't know their business dealings. I suspect there is something. And then Nelly performed at an official event. Rick Ross also went to the crypto ball. I got personal beef with Rick Ross, Andrew, as you know, because he wouldn't come through to your election eve concert unless he was paid and flew out flown out on a private jet. Yeah. He was trying to get flued out. So for me, I've seen where, right, the capitalism comes into play. I understand their goals, and I also understand that many of their goals are to aid and support their community. I know firsthand the stuff that Snoop does for the community. I also know that some of the bias exists the same way that I said I would be going, caping probably a little bit harder for this administration had they done the right thing for Maryland at the end. He softened his tone and his rhetoric about Donald Trump because Harry O means everything to him. Harry O was pardoned at the end of Donald Trump's tenure. I understand the shift. I don't like it because my big letter politics always will supersede my little p politics, but that is something that I've learned from having worked in this space. That is a point of privilege that I have. I would rather engage in conversation with my brother and figure out all of his why than to tear him down anymore in the public, because I know the things that he's done for our folks far outweigh this moment. I do not like it. I would have preferred that he steered clear, but at the end of the day, these are the decisions they made. I respected what Nelly said. I still wish that he didn't go. I understand you respect the office. I try to respect the office. Right now, I'm having a hard time because I don't respect the office holder. I think that he's trying to undo democracy. It is hard for me to look at everything that happened in the last Trump administration and give this dude a pass. And that said, Andrew said he wanted to call this Black engagement with this administration. What does that look like? We really do need to have that conversation, because what we can't do for 4 years is just bash everything. We have to have somebody or somebodies to go in there and have a conversation. It could be a harm reduction conversation. It could be a progress conversation. If Marilyn told me that she's open to a pardon by this administration, there's somebody I got to send in there to have that conversation. But at the end of the day, justice isn't beholden to a party. Liberation isn't beholden to a party. It is only incumbent upon us to ensure that we are always advocating for the best interests of Black people. Now, when your personal interests get in the way of that, we got a problem, and we at least need to have a conversation.
But this seems interesting because our inauguration episode, I was reading the comments and everybody kept saying, yes, Angela, I agree with you, Angela. Angela, make a point. And I was like, what? I don't even remember because we had so many conversations. I'm like, what did she say? And I watched. And you did have all the smoke for people who sat down with Trump. You had all the smoke for President Biden for even sitting next to him. And it does sound a little bit like you're giving Snoop a pass or you're giving Nelly a pass when I don't know what they've done to earn that pass. Like, to me,
I just tried to explain it. Like, I think I've
heard that, but what you're doing is extending them understanding that you are not quick to extend to other people.
No,
if their intention is, oh, I needed this one thing and I was willing to go out there and tap dance and shuck and jive for the white man because he gave me this one thing. That's how I look at it. Then
I understand.
That's kind of a challenge. So that's to say, well, I get it because you wanted this one thing, but to literally scream about Joe Biden even sitting next to him. I don't. To me, that is those 2 points run contrary to each other.
I think I tried to say at the beginning, I am resting in contradiction and hypocrisy myself. I tried to articulate that at the beginning. Trying to do that now. What I'm saying is, if I were in the same boat wanting a pardon, which I did for Marilyn Mosby, my rhetoric sounds remarkably different right now. My sentiment towards the Biden administration is remarkably different right now than had that pardon been received. I can still acknowledge that I thank God that Ketanji Brown was at the inauguration rocking cowrie shells. I can still acknowledge those things. And I think that part of what happens with us and that cheapens discourse is we lack any ability to have a nuanced conversation. I have a different set of standards for people who are in elected office and who told us something very specific about this man and how dangerous he is. Things that you and I all know, and Andrew all know firsthand. We witnessed the attack on our brother under that administration. So I'm clear about the dangers of it. I'm not clear if they know. That's why I said, and this may have gotten lost in all the other ish that I said, but I said, I want to have a conversation and be like, why? What beyond Harry O? What beyond respecting the office? What are you seeing as the opportunity for you being there? What policy priorities are you planning to carry in to this administration to help liberate Black people? And if you're not, please tell me why you thought going to do this was going to help.
I think if we had played that Snoop soundbite in the same fashion that we played the alleged Trump supporters on a Chicago street, or if he was just a random person on the street and you heard him say, I love white people, I'm not racist, my grandson is white. By the way, if he's your biological grandson, Snoop, he's Black.
He's mixed race.
He just meant he's biracial. He was talking about mixed families. He said, anyway, it's fine.
If he's his biological grandson, your grandson is Black. If it's not his biological,
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying I think he was trying to make a point that there's now a white person in his family, so he loves white people, not Donald Trump.
Either way,
we can dissect it. It's not ignorant to me. And also, I disagree around the point of, I do think that white kids want to be more Black now, at least on the West Coast, than they did when we were growing up. Snoop is older than me, but I think that's absolutely the case. I can show you proof of that. So that has shifted.
But you're saying that more white kids today want to be Black than they did in the 60s when the radios were integrated. I
wasn't alive in the 60s.
In the 70s. But there's reading, there's documentaries, there's so much
I'm not talking about them culturally appropriating our stuff. I think that there's a distinction, and I do think that on the West Coast, it is probably a little bit different. It's different on the East Coast for sure, from my experience in being in D.C. or in the Mid-Atlantic region. It's different. I will acknowledge
I think
that.
they've always wanted to be Black, but we can disagree there. But my point that I was making is Snoop, I think if he weren't Snoop and we just heard that soundbite, I wonder if we would have that same understanding, if we are willing to extend that same grace to somebody who isn't a personal friend or somebody who's not in the public eye.
I told you no. I told you I know firsthand the stuff that he's done, and that clip was to show that he said he did not like Donald Trump at that point. He's now since then said he has love for Donald Trump because of what he did for his friend Harry O.
And you feel the same way with Caruso, who's running against.
I don't have anything I don't know that dude. I don't know that dude.
No, but you know Congresswoman Karen Bass, and
But Karen. So here's the other part that we're gonna have to wrestle with at some point, probably a larger podcast. Most elected officials don't reach out to entertainers and communities the way Andrew Gillum did. That is the truth.
So
that is something that has to be wrestled with. As a result of that, when people pounce on your weakness and they go to people and go to fortify and build relationships with folks, people like to be in close association and proximate to positions of power, no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
They willing to be used.
I don't think that it's always about being used. I think it's a transaction. There's a reason why CBC founders said no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. Okay, so I'm just saying that's something that Snoop has mastered.
And I don't know if Celebrities Help a campaign.
But he was at an unofficial event.
I'm narrating that. I'm raising my hand for y'all who are listening and can't see.
I'm quiet.
No, because I actually really wanted to approach this conversation from a place of listening, because I think you all predict very often that I'm always going to come down on the side of whatever is the norm and the status quo, which of course I take issue with. But what I do think is what I've said here on this platform before, and that is that people are extremely self-interested. And there's no color, there's no blindness to color, no regard rather for color in regards to our interests and having our needs met. And so, for instance, in Florida, when I went to a certain well-known, rapper, one of the OGs,
names.
I won't.
Luke Campbell.
I knew exactly what I was like. You got to be talking about Luke.
We
wasn't gonna do it, so I did it, Tiff. That's all. Tag team.
But to meet, with certain people, particularly artists, entertainers on the early end for me, I had to buy bungalows and lunch and all kind of other things that I admittedly said on the phone, my campaign can't afford and neither can I. And so if there's not another option, we're not going to be able to meet. And then you dig a little bit deeper into the relationship of why you would choose this person to get behind over me, who I think best represents what your lived experience has been. Why'd you make that choice? And it is, when I needed such and such and such and such, he gave my football this, my this, that, or my this. And I don't necessarily accept it as an appropriate answer. And I don't even know nobody's asking for my acceptance of it as an answer. But I do know this. I get that when you have a direct example that you can make for what somebody has done for you, a lot of the other stuff falls by the wayside. And let me say this. We have movement leaders right now leading major civil rights organizations in this country who have gone lighter in their accountability for certain networks, certain anchors, certain entertainers,
Talk about the whole damn thing.
We about to hurt some feelings as we gonna go down that road.
Of money.
Talk about the whole thing.
Are we naming names here too?
I will not name names.
Talk about the whole thing.
Angela, you about to name some names? Because
I'm saying it ain't just Snoop. It ain't just Nelly. It ain't just the civil rights leaders. It ain't just the mayors. It ain't just the state reps. It ain't just
it's a lot of people. But I got the same smoke for civil rights leaders. I got the same smoke for people who are my friends. I got the same smoke for people who are my enemies. If you are willing to parade yourself out there like a mascot, looking like a fool, in my opinion, at the risk and damage that this administration is about to do to black people because somebody let you perform or somebody put your money in your pocket, and he's about to send people to the slaughter who are in prisons right now because he pardoned your one friend and you were okay with that. He is ripping families apart at the border, ripping babies apart from their parents, and you okay with that because he gave you your friend a pardon. I've never heard him say.
I have never heard him say.
He said, Angela, it's about him showing up, letting himself be used by this administration.
I understand your perspective. To black
people, it is a disgrace to the ancestors, and thank God there were people who had more principle, who were not so cheaply bought to not stand on the same stage as other people who were just as harmful. And there's nothing wrong with calling them out and saying, "Hey, you were on some bullshit, and you look like a fool standing on that stage."
It also could be that there are some people who haven't had their needs yet directly met, and so they can still act free. And I just want to reclaim time to simply say the point I was trying to make about the self-interest here, and I made the same point when 50 Cent and all these others had all this stuff to say. I said, y'all, 50 Cent is in a different tax bracket than you, me, and the rest of us. What he might be getting by virtue of this person being elected, we may never see. And I just think the
Harry
one
Belafonte wasn't like that. Sidney Poitier wasn't like that. Like we've had entertainers, Sammy Davis even on a level.
Every example. All I'm simply saying is I think from the beginning of time.
He got Are you sure?
From the beginning of time.
He funded a lot, but I hear you. I hear your point.
Okay.
From the beginning of time.
The point is nuance.
Fund something.
The point is nuance. And sorry, Andrew, your point is you're not done.
I don't think it's nuanced. I actually think I think it is very, very human, individualized, personal self-interest that drives every single person on Earth, and what allows us to sort of go back big picture is when we remind ourselves that we are not in that class of people, that we're not that individual, we're not that person, we're not with the right party to get the privilege. And so we then fall back on the fact that if we're not riding together, we're not riding at all. But I promise you, when folks find themselves in positions of power, when they find themselves either in it themselves or in proximity to it, they look first to their own interests and to their own self-preservation. And then lots of clever people get out there and decorate themselves as if they are riding for us. But in truth, we've seen them go hard against the opposition. 100%. And we know what going hard looks like. So when we see you going light here, I can only draw one conclusion about why that is. And that isn't, you took money in the back of your pocket, but you got something. There was something here at Works that you're not disclosing to the rest of us as to why it is you're giving these folks that pass. I applaud you, Angela, for at least announcing your contradiction. But for most of these folks, many of them who consider themselves leaders in our community, who we look to be on the front lines on our behalf, go and they cheapen their position through what their gift, their exchange is going to be. And all I'm saying is I think everyone is possible for that level of subjugation. And two, it is incumbent upon every last single one of us to help save ourselves because they're not saving us. I can't put my faith in that anymore. I never have.
This is the thing. So there's a scripture that says, "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" And I think that own oxygen mask mentality has been removed from the aircraft and taken into community, and that's dangerous. Black people can't afford to put only our own oxygen mask on first because the whole community needs oxygen. That I'm not forgiving. It is one thing for you to say, I appreciate this person for doing this one thing for me, and for that I feel some type of a debt. But I'm going to call out when you are doing immigration raids in my community. And I'm going to call out when you tried to say COVID was a hoax and most of my people died. And I'm going to call out like what you did with abortion rights and access. And I'm going to call like all of it. I think all of that needs to be called out. It is fine for you to say, I benefited in this way, but it is not okay for you to turn a blind eye to everything else that happened. It is fine for you to say, this happened and therefore I'm going to do this. But I hope that you will not lessen your critique, that you will not lessen the ability to hold accountability in the same container as your praise. We do it all the time. I just said at the beginning of the show, here's what the Biden administration got right, and now let me tell you all the things where I feel like they got wrong because it set us back. That's when I say nuance, that's what I mean. I am clear about what happens when we do self-preservation first. That has always served us poorly. That is how we got across the transatlantic, okay? Or across the Atlantic Ocean in the transatlantic slave trade. That is not beneficial to us. I'm not okaying it. All I'm telling y'all is I want to know why. And I want to know why firsthand, and I want to know how they're going to make it right. Because I do think they have an obligation to make it work right. What I would love to do when we have some more time is figure out all the ways that we can also hold the organizations who hold themselves in position to serve us in our needs, to move our agenda forward. The elected officials, the appointed officials, the leaders, all of these people, what is the standard of engagement with this administration? Some should boycott. Some should only critique, but I hope that's not what we do on this podcast. I hope that we will uplift when things are challenging and how great that harm is to us. There was a listener question that came in. I don't know if we got it to play it, but they had ideas about what we should be doing each week. When the administration does something, how does it impact Black people at a disparate level? These things have to be taught. Even folks who are in high position, they don't always know.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's
agreed.
ignorant, but it's not even will for ignorance. It's like, where do we go find this? We gonna bring it to you right here to
but
ensure that you know.
It is a responsibility to find out. Like, that was one of my challenges when Steve Harvey went to meet with Donald Trump. Like, why do you think you are the person to go sit at the table with Donald Trump and discuss policy when you are not a policy expert on literally anything? So
he was gonna give money to his camp. He told him he was going to give money to his camp.
I would say you are being used and bought cheap. But I want to ask Angela a question before we go to the viewer question. So you have been working tirelessly on behalf of Marilyn Mosby. And she is a client, essentially. She's your client. But also you're
pro bono.
Pro bono, yes. But also
love.
Our sister, who we support. If Donald Trump said, you know what, I'm gonna give her a pardon, but you need to show up to this inauguration ball. You have to deliver the Pledge of Allegiance and just don't say shit bad about me for the next year. In 2026, you can say everything you want. But basically, I want you to show up to this ball. I want you, if I got to meet with Black leaders at the White House, I want you there. I want to take a picture with you. And you got to post it on your Instagram and say, thank you, President Trump, for this pardon. Would you do it?
I would think that I would find a way to get to yes, but I ain't doing none of the shit you just said.
I'm not. Think you would. I can't.
I can't.
And you can't tell anybody that was a deal. Like, you got to be quiet about it.
No. I couldn't do it. But what I can tell you is we have had conversations with all of the options on the table, and a pardon for Donald Trump, from Donald Trump for Maryland, is not off the table. I will tell you, to me, I don't care who the justice comes from and why the justice comes. It just needs to come. Now, if in exchange for that, he wants me to lose my own soul, it's not happening. Like, I can't do that. I know what your point is. I'm agreeing with your point.
You are not self-interested. That you are thinking of the greater good.
I'm not wired that way, Tiff. And I think the thing that we have to wrestle with as our obligation, you too, Andrew, because you guys are also not this way. One of the things that I love about you guys is I know that it's never about self first. And if there's ever a moment where I feel like I'm going to go that way, I know that y'all will bring me back. I think that everybody isn't so fortunate, so blessed to have that type of cocoon. And we have to figure out a way to make sure our folks know the history of what happens when we put self over culture or independence over interdependence. It does not work for Black people. You can go and try to fulfill the Caucasian Blue Book if you want to. It ain't gonna work for you. It might work for a time. It might work for a season. It is not going to work for you in the long run. And I think that's really what our folks are saying. They're not just enraged with Nelly, Rick Ross, Snoop, 50. They're hurt. Because these are people that they've counted on. Well, maybe not Nelly, I love you. You know, you was my fiance on TV, but respectfully, you don't have the same cultural, input. Relevance. And, anyway, Snoop as Snoop and maybe arguably 50. I think that people always trusted that they would get truth by any means necessary from Snoop. And I think that's what people are reflecting. So, I'm looking forward to having a conversation with them about it and figure out where we go from here. We got to go somewhere. We can't stay here. This ain't it.
I know we're going to, at some point, I'll wait.
Can I just say real quick, and I'll be quiet?
No, go right ahead.
You have been very patient with us this whole episode.
I know Crosstalk was not famous last week, so I tried to button up.
Sorry,
I'm apologizing to you, Andrew, because you have been very patient today. I just want to say, in all of our careers, but certainly mine in television, there were definitely pathways I could have taken. If I wanted to be self-interested, I want to host the Today Show. I want to earn 7 figures. There were things that I didn't have to do or say. I didn't have to hold the line for the community on my show to my own peril. There were things in life I could have taken different jobs for different companies and done communications for this company or outreach for this company. I've always wanted to live in service to Black folks. I am convicted that I share this space with two co-hosts who also feel that way. And so I do not have the same grace or understanding. I don't think it's a bad thing to have it. I just personally do not have it because when you've made that sacrifice and paid a price for it, I just think, like, I'm willing to bleed for my people. I'm willing to die for my people. I'm going to join a fight for my people. And if somebody came to me and said, I'm going to offer you this one breadcrumb if you would but sacrifice your people, I always knew I could always come home to community. The favor and love from white corporate entities is fickle. They will love you on Monday and hate you by Friday. But there is nothing I can imagine that would be dangled before me that would make me want to sacrifice the genuine birthright of love that I have from my fellow Black people who I will always, to the day I die, live in service to. That's my only point. And I think y'all both feel the same way.
I do. And I know that we were going to push to another topic, but I just wanted to say, in practicality, the exchange, the offer is very rarely, if ever, that obvious a quid pro quo. Almost always it is the exchange is that the president is going to do, he sees the injustice in your situation and we're going to pardon you. And the reason why they don't expect anything on the back end is the symbolism of their extension of that grace does the job for itself. It speaks volumes for itself. When Kwame Kilpatrick got pardoned amongst rattlers and the family community and a bunch else, alphas around that, folks really felt a sort of way because they know the effort and energy that went into the previous administration, a Democrat, and trying to get that same thing to have happened. And it,
the former mayor of Detroit.
Correct, right, the commuting of the sentence. And it didn't happen. And so Kwame didn't have to go out there and hold a sign for Donald Trump. He didn't have to say a damn thing beyond that. The action in and of itself suggested to the people what that may have meant. And that's all I'm saying with regard to the example you gave around Maryland. It isn't going to be, if you do this and you show up here, and here. The extension of that grace to her, let me tell you this, they're going to let everybody know they did it. She's obviously going to let folks know that she received one. And the action will speak for itself. And guess what? It will likely inure more people toward him because it will be a sign of what he has an appetite for. The problem, of course, that all of us are able to readily identify is that is individual, case-specific, selective, grace, if I wanted to use that word very loosely. However, what isn't happening is that grace is not being extended to a system that is designed to produce this outcome every single time you put the input in. When the input goes in, this is the exact outcome we're going to get. So the failure to disrupt that system becomes then our greater community's responsibility to say, wow, thank you. You did the right thing here for Maryland. Now let's talk about the incarceration rates, the over-prosecution rates, the over-sentencing in our community, what we're going to do about that, because that is where the larger community issue exists, and us ripping fathers, brothers, sons, daughters, sisters away from their families because of a churning system that is insatiable. It will never be full. The appetite is never satisfied because the system wasn't designed to ever satisfy it. You just got to keep putting inputs in. I'm off the ladder, y'all, but I can't help but think that, one, it isn't Marilyn's fault if she got a pardon through Trump, but I do know what the symbolism will send by way of a signal to the community, and I think the community's reaction or the community's response has to be, that's good, you did a good thing here, but now let's talk about the system and how we level it so that people like Marilyn are not right back on the doorstep tomorrow morning, because we all know that's where it's going to go.
That's just it too, you guys. This is honest to God, this is what I'm wrestling with. It's not just these isolated instances or incidents with these rappers. It is two things. One, and they're contradictory again. Sorry, I'm walking hypocrisy today. I apologize.
Nuance.
So, yeah. All my gray areas. I'm in the gray today. So there is this idea that Joe Biden had this bucket for public corruption. He wouldn't touch any public corruption cases, even if they were CBC members who once supported him, from Kareem Brown to Alcee Hastings posthumously to whatever, right? With this administration, that was sworn in on MLK Day, where anything goes, where you can buy your way into the policy or the deregulation that you want. The cloud around her to the general public, and not just the Marilyns of the world, but the others who didn't receive the pardons, the thousands that Tiffany talked about. Let's say he does it. What it says, because of the image of this administration in my own mind, is he lets all corruption go. So then these people who didn't deserve there to be there to begin with are now under this, like, they're associated with corruption bubble, which also sucks. That's one thing. The other thing that it does is, and this is the part that's enraging and really sad to me, is for the people who fought the hardest to preserve the Democratic Party, to uplift the Democratic Party, to challenge it to be better, to contract with us, to hire us, to run us, to utilize us, to lift us up, to support our agenda. We didn't really have audience there. We could talk. You would agree. Joe Biden, you would look in the faces of parishioners in church on Sunday in South Carolina and say, you're going to see what you can do for Maryland. You always knew the right thing to say, but could never find the right thing to do, or shouldn't say never, that's not true. Rarely, especially when it came time to talk about our justice. That's the conundrum. I'm not trying to send people to the Republican Party. I definitely ain't seen justice there. But what happens if they start filling the holes, of the places where we've been abused and misused and unheard and treated as invisible in this party? I'm not gonna lie to y'all, that scares me. That scares me because I don't think it's better over there. But if over time the policies become better over there, Black people shouldn't be beholden to a party. They should be beholden to their collective interests. And I think therein lies the balance. Our collective interests have to pave the way, not our solo interests.
Yes.
That's beautifully said. And y'all, you know what? We've got a lot more on this. For our listeners, we're never going to close this out because we have to wrestle with it. And guess what?
I'm
just
still
like
wrestling
grief,
for sure.
there are going to be stages to this thing.
That's true.
Because I've already seen the evolution, Angela, from last week to this week in some of your comments, similar to what Tiffany has already highlighted, which I love.
If it wasn't Snoop, I might not be there.
No,
but that's honestly...
But we're going to hold you accountable to your gray now.
You
right?
should.
In the future, have that kind of grace with your brother who says, I don't give a damn about a coffee.
No, I have grace for you saying you don't give a damn about a coffee. I ain't got grace for you saying it was fine. My only thing is, I think that elected leaders have a different responsibility. I hear you guys' point that this man has...
have influence over community.
I hear that.
People who have influence.
I hear that. I'm just saying, in order for them to properly leverage their influence, they have to be educated. And I don't think that it is a wanton disregard for education. I think that there's not been an opportunity.
Well, here's my one piece of advice for those individuals, like our sojourning entertainers in a generation before. When they didn't know the particulars of the issues, of the matters, they brought experts with them. They didn't go into rooms by themselves.
Yes.
They bought people who knew, who sat alongside them. And when the question was posed, that entertainer, that celebrity, that influencer would look to the expert to name names, to name agendas, and to then make sure that the exchange was one that was equitable and right for our community. So if you don't know, ignorance is no longer, if it has ever been, a sufficient excuse.
100%.
There are a lot of tools available to you. And Tiff, take us to a topic that I know has to be on your mind there in D.C.
I tell you, we've gone. I don't even want to get in. I think this is the most interesting topic. I told y'all at the beginning, if there's time, we would get into this. And I think we have exhausted
you didn't whet the appetite of all your D.C. friends and government.
Honestly, I think this topic is so, it's so interesting to people. And we didn't even get into all the things that we wanted to because we really didn't talk a lot about Black engagement, you know, and what that looks like going forward.
I think there are phases to this, y'all. This is why I think we have to let the listeners know we're not going to. Absolutely.
But you guys,
I would like to know from... Well, I just want to say really quickly, I want to know from the viewers if you guys can drop a comment and let us know your thoughts on. Okay, I don't know what happened.
Oh,
the
hell,
camera.
where'd Tiffany go?
All right, welcome back, everybody.
You look different, girl.
I know. Having technical difficulties.
You got a little haze
today.
That's anointing.
Yes. It is not a filter that I'm trying to work out.
Oh, no, you do love
Casper.
filters. You did put a filter on your stuff. That's exactly what you did.
called
I woke
Casper.
up like
Seriously, Andrew.
this. I woke up like
Did you say
no,
Casper?
It's
We're
called
having
Casper.
some
It's
camera
called Shekinah's
issues
glory.
today, so I look a little different. But this lively discussion, I do want you guys to know this discussion is going to continue
Absolutely.
over time. I would love to hear from the viewers what you guys want to hear when it comes to Black engagement. What can we inform you about, and how can we be helpful as we're all figuring this out? Because we are flying by the seat of our pants here with this administration. But moving us right along, we want to get into CTAs. Angela, I know you were saying it's really important that you wanted to leave people, at least today, with something that they can do. So all of our CTAs will center around a call to action, something that you can do to hopefully bring some knowledge, information, serenity, action, whatever that thing is, as we go forward. So Angela, you want to go first?
Yes, I'm going to just echo what I know Andrew's going to do, which is to play this prayer from the bishop. We definitely going to need intercessory prayer to make it through the next 4 years. I'd also just say one of my favorite things that you say all the time, Tiff, is to approach things with genuine curiosity. And I would invite us all to do that, even when we fundamentally disagree with people. Why are you pursuing this policy? Why would you support someone that is doing things that cause intentional harm to other communities? And then when you do see an intentional harm being placed onto the backs of people who can't fight for themselves, make sure you stand up for them and ask why. Make sure you figure out how to arm and equip them. I've seen a number of posts from our elected officials. Some of them are friends like Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley on advising people of what to do if ICE comes knocking at their door or comes to their workplace for an ICE raid. That's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So make sure that you're telling people what they can do if things like that happen. If someone is being targeted that you know about, making sure that you stand with them to ensure that they're not going through that on their own. The most important thing for us to remember is that we were created to be interdependent. That means when we go through struggle, we shouldn't go through it alone. And when we're celebrating a victory, we shouldn't be alone either.
I feel that.
I love that.
feel that.
Are we closing with the bishop?
We will close with the
Andrew
bishop.
didn't go yet.
I thought that was his CTA. Go ahead, Andrew.
A part of my
He got
CTA, which is the first one is if your head is spinning right now to the news, to these executive orders, to what feels like the capitulation of people you admired, respected, expected more from. The idea of the other side is to exhaust you, is to get you so dejected, rejected, alone, and out of community, so that you aren't able to mount the kind of fight that is required in this moment. If they exhaust us, if they tire us all out, if they make us throw up our hands and say, you know what, to hell, they got it all anyway, then we're making their job that much easier. We're making their walk, their drive that much straighter. If there are no speed bumps, no stop signs, no concrete boulders to delay, defray, or completely deflect their assault, then they're going to go straight away into it. So I know that we all have exhaustion and disappointment and letdown and hurt and fear and all that other stuff residing in our heads and our minds and our spirits right now. But know that those are all tools of the enemy, and they're all non-redemptive. They don't help us. They don't elevate us. They don't get us freer. I just want to point in closing on this, my request is to maybe possibly take some example from the good bishop, who's hopefully going to close us out after Tiffany's CTA, to give us, I think, a spirit of fight, a spirit of speaking truth to power, and then an example of how to do it without fear.
Okay. So my CTA is, I know a lot of you asked, like, what are reputable sources where we can go? And I just want to give a big shout out to Michael Harriet. He curated an amazing weekend. We traveled to the deep south in Georgia. And in my outcast voice, all the players came from far and wide. Writers and doers and dreamers and builders came. And he announced the launch of Contraband Camp, which is a Substack that he founded. So You'll see familiar names on there. There'll be actual reporting, writers. And as you all know, he's the best-selling author of Black AF History. So please read that. Also, Aaron Haynes does an amazing newsletter and writes a column for the 19th. So please check that out. And really quickly, my last CTA is please, please, please vote for us for the NAACP Image Awards. You can vote at naacpimage.net. You can vote as many times from different emails. It cannot be the same email, but tell your friends, family, everybody.
Tiff, you gonna get us disqualified.
No,
that's not Shekinah's glory. That's a fog of confusion. She didn't mean that.
No,
everybody.
I'm saying you can tell your friends, family,
Yes, to vote.
sister,
Everybody.
yes, everybody. So
I'm
please
sorry,
have
Tiff,
everybody
you're a fair player.
vote
I don't know
for
what
us.
I was thinking.
And
Tiff would never encourage you to vote from multiple email addresses.
So I think
she
y'all
would
got
never.
it. Make sure that y'all tell your friends and family to vote for us. And all right, Andrew, I know you have a great CTA and way to close us out.
So let's see and hear an example from the great bishop.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
Yeah.
As always, we want to remind you, everyone, to leave a review and subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all platforms and YouTube. New episodes drop every Thursday with a special mini pod every Monday. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our text or our email list on our website, nativelandpod.com. We are Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all. There are 649 days until midterm elections.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rye, Gillum, and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth. Even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.